The first thing the human noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, not the calm, before the storm kind either, but a deep, unnatural silence that felt engineered, like the air itself had been trained not to make noise. His boots made no sound on the black stone floor. His breathing felt too loud inside his helmet, like it might offend the place. The chamber was enormous, but not empty. Light drifted in slow ribbons from the ceiling far above, bending as if gravity itself had opinions here. Tall figures stood along the walls, statues at first glance, but the human's instinct screamed that they were very much alive. None of them moved. None of them spoke. At the far end of the hall, elevated on a structure that wasn't quite a throne and wasn't quite a machine, sat the alien queen. She did not rise when he was pushed forward. She did not acknowledge him at all. And that, more than the weapons trained on his spine, made his pulse spike. He had faced death before. He had watched cities burn from orbit, listened to soldiers beg over broken comms, held friends while their bodies failed them. Death was loud, messy, emotional. This was different. The queen's form was tall and severe, her posture unnervingly still. Her skin was a deep, muted tone that shifted subtly with the light, not glowing, not dull, controlled. Her eyes were forward, facing like a predator's, but older somehow, carrying the weight of decisions made centuries ago. She finally spoke. "You crossed my border knowing the penalty." Her voice did not echo. It didn't need to. It felt like it was already inside his skull. The human swallowed. "Yes." "You killed my sentinels." "Yes." "You refused extraction when your command ordered retreat." He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "Wes." That pause did it. Something changed in the room, not visibly but palpably, like pressure building beneath the skin of reality. One of the figures along the wall shifted slightly, claws scraping stone. The queen tilted her head. "Explain," she said. The human lifted his chin. His armor was scorched, cracked along one shoulder, patched badly in places where field repairs had been rushed. He looked like a man who had been running on borrowed strength for too long. "Because if I left," he said, choosing his words carefully, "everyone on the outer colonies would die, and you wouldn't even know who to blame." That earned him attention. The queen rose, not suddenly, not dramatically, but when she did, the scale of her became clear. She descended from the dais with slow, deliberate steps, each one precise, measured, as if the act of walking itself was political. "You presume to threaten me with ignorance," she said calmly. "No," he replied. "I'm warning you." They stood facing each other now. No guards between them, no translators, just two species that had spent decades misunderstanding each other. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak boldly for someone awaiting execution." "Execution implies I failed," he said. "I didn't." That was when the first crack appeared in her composure. Not anger, not curiosity, recognition. She had seen this before, long ago, in records she kept sealed, in memories she rarely allowed herself to touch. A human who did not beg, a human who did not posture, a human who stood because standing was all he had left. She circled him once, slowly. He tracked her movement without turning fully, injured leg protesting but holding. "Do you know why bonding is forbidden in my empire?" she asked. He exhaled. "Because it scares you." A sharp intake of breath rippled through the chamber. A mistake, a fatal one. The queen stopped behind him. "For centuries," she said, voice dangerously even, bonding weakened rulers. It tied decision to emotion. It gave enemies leverage. It destroyed dynasties. He nodded slightly. "I've read the history." "You've read propaganda," she corrected. "Maybe," he said. "But I've lived the result." She turned him to face her with a single clawed finger under his chin, not forceful, not gentle. "Exact. And what result is that? Human?" He met her eyes. "An empire that survives but doesn't live." For a moment, no one breathed. If you're enjoying this kind of slow burn, character-driven, sci-fi stories that don't rush, don't spoon-feed, and let emotions build naturally, take a second to subscribe. These aren't machine-written scripts. They're meant to feel human, flawed, and earned, all the way to the end. The queen released him. "You will speak to my council," she said, turning away. "They will decide your fate." The human didn't move. "With respect," he said carefully, "your council is already compromised." That did it. The queen turned so fast the air shifted. "Choose your next words wisely." They've been leaking patrol data for months, he continued. Not for profit. For balance, they think weakening you prevents war. Silence fell like a blade. One of the wall figures stepped forward instinctively. The Queen raised a hand without looking. It stopped. How? She asked quietly. Would a human know this? He closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, there was something raw there, not fear, fatigue. Because I followed the trail, he said. And because someone inside your empire wants you isolated, alone, unbonded. Her skin shifted, just barely. A faint shimmer, quickly suppressed. That was not supposed to happen. She felt it then. Not a bond, not yet, but a pull. A strange alignment like two frequencies brushing too close. Dangerous, unacceptable, and somehow steadying. Take him, she ordered at last. Not to the cells. That caused murmurs. To the inner sanctum, she finished. Alive. The human allowed himself a breath as the restraints disengaged. As guards moved in, he glanced back at her. You don't trust me, he said. No, she replied. Then why? Because, she interrupted, eyes fixed on him. For the first time in a very long time, someone spoke to me like a ruler instead of a weapon. As he was led away, the Queen remained standing alone in the chamber, staring at nothing. She told herself it was strategy. She told herself it was control. She told herself it was not the beginning of something she had sworn would never happen again. The inner sanctum did not look like a prison. That unsettled the human more than restraints ever could have. There were no bars, no visible weapons, no humming suppression fields pressing against his skull. Instead, the space opened wide and circular, its walls layered with living material that pulsed slowly, like the inside of a massive organism breathing in its sleep. Light came from nowhere specific, soft and directionless, removing shadows instead of casting them. It felt intimate. Elias stood at the center, hands free now, armor stripped away and replaced with simple neutral garments that clung uncomfortably to half-healed injuries. His shoulder still burned. His ribs ached with every breath. But it wasn't the pain that kept him alert. It was the feeling of being seen. Not watched. Seen. He became aware of her presence before she entered. The air shifted slightly, pressure redistributing itself as if the room adjusted for her. When the alien queen stepped through the archway, she was not wearing ceremonial armor. No crown, no symbols of rank. Just her, tall, composed, and stripped of spectacle in a way that somehow made her more dangerous. You removed the guards, Elias said quietly. I removed the noise, she replied. She stopped several steps away, not close enough to touch, not far enough to feel distant. Do you know where you are? She asked. The place you swore never to use again, he answered. Judging by the architecture, a bonding chamber. Her eyes flicked to the walls, then back to him. Your species is observant, survival trait. Bonding halls were decommissioned centuries ago, she said. This one remains dormant, yet fully functional, he added. She did not deny it. They stood there for a long moment, neither speaking, the space between them thick with things neither had planned to say. You accused my council of treason, she said at last. That accusation carries consequences. Yeah, Elias replied. I figured. Among my people, such claims require proof. I know. And yet you came alone, he exhaled slowly. If I'd brought proof through official channels, it would have disappeared. Or I would have. Her gaze sharpened. So you chose me. I chose the one person they couldn't silence quietly. That earned a subtle reaction, not approval, not anger, but something like reluctant acknowledgement. She circled him again, slower this time, studying posture, micro-movements, the way he favored one side without realizing it. You are damaged, she said. Still functional. Barely. Still enough. She stopped in front of him. You risked extinction-level retaliation to deliver a warning you could not be certain I would hear. Elias met her eyes. I was certain you would. Why? He hesitated. This wasn't fear. This was calculation mixed with honesty, a dangerous combination. Because you banned bonding, he said. Only someone who's been burned by connection would fear it that much. The air changed again. Not dramatically. No alarms. No visible energy spikes. Just a low, quiet resonance under his skin, like standing too close to a generator. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted despite her effort to suppress them, faint, irregular, almost imperceptible. You assume much, she said. I recognize it. he replied softly. Because humans do the same thing. We call it independence, strength, self-reliance. Usually it's just unprocessed loss. Silence fell heavy. Outside the sanctum, the palace was anything but quiet. The council chamber was in controlled chaos. Elders argued in clipped, precise tones, carefully avoiding any phrasing that could be recorded as sedition. Military advisors waited tense, caught between loyalty and survival instinct. The queen had not convened them. That worried them more than her anger ever could. Inside the sanctum, she finally spoke again. "You are not wrong," she said. "Which makes you dangerous?" "That's fair." Bonding once gave my enemies away inside my predecessor's mind. Through her mate, they learned her fears, her doubts, her thresholds. Elias frowned slightly. Then bonding wasn't the weakness. Exposure was. Her eyes narrowed. "Explain." "You don't lose strength by caring," he said. "You lose it by pretending you don't. That's when you stop protecting the right things." She studied him intently now, no longer as a threat, not quite as an ally either, as something unfinished. A sudden pulse rippled through the walls. She stiffened. "They're moving," Elias said immediately. "Yes," she replied. "The council has triggered a procedural override. To remove you. To test me." That was worse. The sanctum lights dimmed slightly as the palace systems shifted into contingency mode. Somewhere far above them, power rerouted. Defense grids realigned. "They'll come for me next," Elias said. "Yes." He nodded once. "Then we're out of time." Her gaze snapped back to him. "You assume I intend to stop them." "You didn't kill me," he said simply.
That tells me enough.
She stepped closer now. Close enough that he could feel the subtle warmth of her biofield against his skin, the way it hummed in response to proximity. "Bonding begins like this," she said quietly. "With resonance. With alignment that has no right to exist." Elias swallowed. "Then don't let it finish." Her hand rose. For a moment, he thought she meant to strike him. Instead, she placed her palm against his chest, directly over his heart. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. Not pain, not pleasure, but clarity. His breath caught as something inside him synchronized, like a rhythm he hadn't known was off, suddenly snapping into place. Her eyes widened. She pulled her hand back instantly. "No," she whispered. Too late. The sanctum reacted. Light flared along the walls, patterns igniting in ancient sequences long thought obsolete. The room recognized them, their nervous systems brushing too close to a shared frequency. A partial bond. Unstable. Uncontrolled. Outside, alarms finally sounded. The council felt it. "They'll declare you compromised," Elias said, voice rough. "They already have," she replied. Guards appeared at the entrance, weapons raised not at Elias, at their queen. She straightened slowly, every trace of hesitation burned away, replaced by something colder and sharper. "Stay here," she told him. "No," he said immediately. She turned. "This is not a request." He met her gaze without flinching. "Then this is where you execute me." Something in her expression cracked, just a hairline fracture, gone almost as soon as it appeared. She made a decision. "Then stand behind me," she said, "and do not speak unless I command it." As the doors opened and the council entered with armed escort, the alien queen stepped forward, not alone this time, and for the first time in centuries, the empire felt it. A ruler no longer isolated, a presence no longer singular, not bonded, not yet, but no longer unbreakably alone either. The council chamber was built to intimidate outsiders. Circular, tiered, and deliberately disproportionate, it placed the speaker's platform at the lowest point while the elders loomed above like judges carved into stone. It was meant to remind anyone standing there that power did not belong to individuals, but to consensus, tradition, and fear dressed up as wisdom. Queen Zereth stepped into it without slowing. Elias walked half a pace behind her, exactly where she had ordered him to stand, though every instinct in his body screamed that this was a bad place for a human with no allies and too much unwanted attention. The murmurs began immediately. Not outrage, not shock, calculation. Elder Vela was the first to speak, his elongated form leaning forward, ceremonial mantle glinting under the chamber lights. "You bring the contamination with you," he said calmly. Bold. Or careless, Zereth did not look at him. "You activated an override without my authorization." "Procedural safeguard," another elder replied, "designed for moments when a ruler's judgment may be compromised. Elias felt it then, the subtle shift in the room, the way the Queen's posture changed. Not defensive, not angry. Focused. Compromised, she repeated. Because I did not execute a prisoner fast enough for your comfort. Because you brought him into a sealed sanctum, Vela countered. Because palace systems detected resonance. That word landed like a blade. Resonance. Elias clenched his jaw. He could still feel it, faint but persistent, like an echo behind his thoughts. Not voices. Not emotions bleeding through. Just awareness. Presence. Zirith lifted her gaze slowly, letting it travel the full circle of faces above her. You are afraid. We are cautious, Vela said. History demands it. History, she replied, is written by those too frightened to adapt. A ripple moved through the chamber, not agreement, not dissent, but unease. This was not the language of compromise. This was the language of a ruler who had already decided. Another elder spoke, voice sharp. You allowed a human to stand beside you during a security breach. I allowed competence to stand beside me, Zirith said. An unfamiliar concept, I see. Elias felt the eyes on him then, dissecting, measuring, searching for weakness. You claim internal betrayal, Vela said. Present evidence. Zirith gestured slightly. Elias stepped forward before fear could argue him back. The floor felt colder here, harder. I traced the leak through pattern anomalies, he said, voice steady. Patrol reroutes that made no tactical sense. Delayed response times that aligned with external probes. Someone inside wanted to see how fast you'd bleed without committing fully. Speculation, an elder snapped. No, Elias replied, meeting their gaze. Preparation. He activated the data shard he had hidden for weeks, projecting layered trajectories, time stamps, and correlation markers into the air. The patterns were subtle but undeniable. Silence followed. Not the heavy silence of disbelief. The dangerous silence of recognition. Vela's expression tightened. Even if this were true, it does not justify. It explains why you wanted him dead quietly. Zirith cut in. The chamber stirred. You feared what he might reveal, she continued, and what I might do with that knowledge. That is an accusation bordering on sedition, Vela said coldly. Then refute it, she replied. Explain why council access codes were used in 3 unauthorized network audits over the past cycle. The elder did not answer immediately. That hesitation was enough. Elias felt the Queen beside him then, not physically but internally, like a presence bracing itself against his thoughts. Not intrusive, protective, he swallowed. This was bigger than survival now. This was fracture. Guards shifted uneasily. Their weapons were still down, but hands hovered closer to grips. Vela finally spoke. Bonding erodes judgment. You are proving our point. Zirith turned toward Elias then, and for a heartbeat, the chamber faded. You feel it too, she said quietly. The alignment, yes, he admitted. And does it control you? No. Does it weaken you? He shook his head. It clarifies things. She faced the council again. You speak of weakness, she said. Yet when my predecessor bonded, it was not love that destroyed her. It was exploitation by those closest to her. Her gaze fixed on Vela. You fear bonding because it removes your ability to manipulate in silence. The accusation struck hard. That was when the first shot was fired. Not at Elias, at her. Energy tore through the air where Zirith's head had been a fraction of a second earlier. She moved without thinking, pulling Elias down as the blast scorched the chamber wall. Chaos erupted. Guards drew weapons. Elders shouted commands. Automated defenses struggled to identify targets amid conflicting authority signals. Elias rolled to his feet, adrenaline flooding his system. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon, positioning himself instinctively between the Queen and the attackers. Stay behind me, he said. She glanced at him sharply. That is my line. Another blast slammed into the daze, sending stone fragments flying. Vela was already retreating, escorted by loyalists. Coop, Elias muttered. Not subtle anymore? Fear rarely is, Zirith replied. She raised both hands and the chamber responded. Gravity shifted. Not violently, not catastrophically, precisely. The attackers found themselves pinned, movement slowed to a crawl. The Queen walked forward through the suspended chaos, her expression unreadable. Stand down, she commanded. Some did. Others tried to fire anyway. Elias reacted before thought could interfere, shoving her aside as a delayed blast tore through the space they had occupied. Pain flared across his side as the energy grazed him. He went down hard. Seereth felt it instantly. Not the injury itself, the shock of it, the sudden disruption in his internal rhythm. The partial bond flared like a warning alarm inside her nervous system. She screamed, not in rage, in refusal. The gravity field collapsed inward, crushing weapons, disabling attackers without killing them. Silence followed, broken only by Elias's ragged breathing. She was at his side in an instant, lowering herself beside him, hands hovering uncertainly over the wound. "You disobeyed me," she said tightly. He grimaced. "Worth it?" Her skin glowed now openly, fiercely, the ancient patterns no longer suppressed. The chamber systems reacted again, recording what history had not seen in generations. A queen choosing. Not tradition. Not fear. A person. "You will survive," she said, more command than reassurance. He looked up at her, blood on his lip, eyes steady despite the pain. "You okay?" Something in her chest shifted, not the bond deepening, but something older, more dangerous. Attachment. She stood slowly, lifting him with her despite protests, turning to face the stunned remains of the council. "This council is dissolved," she said. "Pending investigation." No one argued. Not now. As she carried Elias from the chamber, alarms still echoing through the palace, the Empire felt the rupture fully. Not a bond. Not yet. But the moment when isolation finally lost its grip, the palace was quiet now. Quiet in the kind of way that felt wrong, not peaceful, but pregnant with tension. Corridors that usually hummed with activity were empty. Guards lingered only at critical junctions, whispering among themselves, unsure whether to obey orders or instinct. The council had been sent into temporary exile pending investigation, though no one truly expected them to return without being diminished. Seereth carried Elias to her private quarters, not the ceremonial suite, not the sanctum, but the chamber she had once thought of as her own isolation. For centuries, it had been a place where she would be alone with nothing but cold stone, endless records, and the faint echo of memories she tried to forget. Tonight, it would host something entirely different. He was unconscious for only a few moments, but when his eyes fluttered open, he found himself lying on a low, reinforced divan. His wounds were stabilized, not through sterile efficiency, but through careful, precise care. Her hands lingered at his side, almost reluctantly, as if proximity alone demanded restraint. "Don't," he muttered, voice raspy, "don't get soft on me." She paused, adjusting a bandage over his shoulder. "Softness is a human trait," she said, "and dangerous for someone in your position." He laughed, low and rough. "Then I guess I'm in trouble." She didn't respond with words. She simply studied him. Every scar, every line of fatigue, every micro-movement, the human didn't hide pain, didn't fake resilience. And yet he had survived where others would have faltered. That honesty, raw and unpolished, made her chest tighten in ways she had sworn she would never allow. "The council will attempt to undermine me," she said finally. "And you will be a target. I cannot pretend otherwise." "I'm aware," Elias replied. "I'm also aware that no one survives this life pretending they are untouchable." There it was again, that strange alignment she had felt when he first touched her in the sanctum, a pull that defied centuries of logic and tradition. She had tried to suppress it, tried to classify it as tactical awareness, but she could no longer deny the truth. This human had shifted something inside her, something she had not felt in lifetime's vulnerability wrapped in courage. "You are reckless," she said. Though her tone had softened, he smiled faintly, eyes glinting with humor despite exhaustion. "You married reckless with survival instincts. Worked out pretty well for me so far." Her lips twitched. She ignored the gesture. Outside, the Empire was watching. News of the partial coup, the failed assassination, and the Queen's decisive response spread through the palace networks like wildfire. Allies who had been cautious now rallied. Soldiers who had been hesitant now committed fully. The human beside her, not officially bonded, not even formally acknowledged in any ceremonial sense, had already shifted the balance of power. They didn't speak much that night. Words were unnecessary. Presence sufficed. When she moved to check his wounds again, he reached out, not forcefully, not expectantly, but in a gesture that spoke of trust. Their fingers brushed lightly, and for the briefest instant, it was enough. Not a bond in the traditional sense, but a resonance she could feel deep in her neural pathways. This is uncharted, she admitted quietly.
Yes,
He said. And sometimes the best strategy is uncharted territory. For the first time in centuries, she allowed herself to linger in the space beside someone without calculating the politics, without measuring risk. A human who had survived her empire, who had challenged her authority without breaking, who had touched something inside her that she had sworn would remain untouchable. Morning came slowly. Sunlight filtered through the thick, energy-absorbing glass of her quarters, spilled over the room. Guards moved efficiently, but no one interfered. The council had not dared return. The empire was momentarily in stasis, waiting to see if the queen would falter. She did not. Elias sat up, still weak but determined. What now? Now, she said, smoothing a fold in the floor mat beside her, we endure. We ensure that those who sought to manipulate from the shadows understand that they are not untouchable, and we do it together. He allowed himself a smile. Together, he echoed, the word carrying weight he didn't often allow himself to feel. And in that room, with no audience, no decree, no ceremonial words, the alien queen who had sworn never to bond realized that strength wasn't in isolation. Strength was in trust. Strength was in understanding. And for the first time, she allowed herself to acknowledge that the human beside her, wounded, defiant, unbroken, had changed her entirely. They did not declare a bond. They did not announce allegiance beyond necessity. But the empire sensed it anyway, a shift in power, in presence, in intent. Where fear had once ruled, mutual respect now lingered, tempered by risk, tempered by history, tempered by emotions neither would name aloud. Outside, the city of her empire awoke to news of a failed internal strike. The council's power was diminished. Soldiers who had hesitated now acted with conviction. And somewhere in the palace, a human warrior sat quietly, tending to his own wounds, while the alien queen remained near him, her posture commanding yet protective, her gaze thoughtful and infinitely human in ways no one else could understand. They were survivors. They were allies. They were for the first time in centuries unpredictable. And that unpredictability, fragile, human, alive, was exactly what would define the next era.